Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Seeking knowledge, they're intertwined, and Ikhlaas are intertwined. And you won't have tawfiq in seeking knowledge without Ikhlaas. When you study, you apply, you convey this deen, you need Allah's help. You need Allah's aid in the honorable task of both learning and teaching. You lack Ikhlaas in seeking and teaching Islam, and Allah will render you on your own. What students of knowledge need to keep in mind is when we have a deficiency in Ikhlaas, our punishment is worse than anyone else. If we attribute ourselves and we try and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be students of knowledge, if we don't fix our intentions, our punishment is worse. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose you as a student of ilm to honor you with the ilm. Allah honored you with that. Allah gave it to you. A student of ilm should walk around feeling they have a crown of honor on their heads from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because they were chosen by Allah to absorb and convey this message. So they can't have no room or deficiency in Ikhlaas. Man yuridillahu bihi khayran yufaqihu fi din. Whoever Allah wants good in, He will grant him knowledge of the deen. The opposite meaning, mafhum al-mukhalafa in Arabic, the opposite meaning is whoever Allah does not want good in, He will deprive him of this knowledge. That's why you see many people deprived. Some people so eager come, they want to study, first 2-3 classes, and they're gone. Allah didn't want no good in them. Allah chose to honor you with this noble task. And if you have any deficiency in your Ikhlaas, then you chose other than Allah or gave a percentage to other than Allah. Is that a just way to deal in with Allah? Allah chose you to honor you. He chose you. He could have chose other than you. And you choose other than Allah with that which He chose to honor you with. The punishment comes worse in a student of ilm. Who's the first one to go to Jahannam? Wal-'iyadhu billah. Alim, qari, mujahid. One of the most horrific hadith for us is this hadith that makes the hair stand on end. Wallah al-azim. He learned. He's knowledgeable. He studied. He had knowledge. And that gets him to Jahannam. Wal-'iyadhu billah. He learned and he taught to be called a alim or for worldly gain, his intention. People gave him respect. They gave him a title. They honored him because Allah honored him with that knowledge. But he chose worldly gain. The second is a reciter who recited. So people can say he's recited. Look at his voice. Look at how he memorizes the Quran. Mujahid, who fought to be called the hero. In all of them, the intention was the deficiency. The three categories, people looked up to them because they're among the best categories. Ordaining the good and forbidding the evil. Reciters who recite and teach. And those who defend this ummah. They are the purest ibadat. And that's why they're the first to enter Jahannam wal-'iyadhu billah with deficiency in Ikhlaas. A sincere mukhlis who is sincere in being a alim or a reciter or a mujahid, he gets among the highest ranks in Jannah. If Allah gives the sincere mukhlis the high ranks in Jannah, then the opposite is true. In that one who negated the Ikhlaas in those matters will be punished most severely in Jahannam. They are the first to go to hell if they lack sincerity, right? The opposite is true. And those who fix their sincerity are among the first to enter Jannah and get the highest levels in Jannah. And the opposite is true. Those who didn't, first in Jahannam and in the bottom of Jahannam. If I had a friend or a student or a brother and I brought him close to me, then he betrayed me. Isn't that worse than a stranger or an enemy betraying me? No doubt about it. Remember, I tweeted upon my release, at the end, we will remember not the words and torture of our enemies, I said, but the silence and betrayal of our friends. Betrayal from a close one is much more hurtful. Whereas sometimes what comes from strangers or enemies, you care less about it. In fact, you expect it. No matter what they do, you expect it and more. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala honored you with knowledge. So man up to the task with sincerity. He brought you near him in this ibadah. He brought you near him in this ibadah, in this honorable task. Don't betray it with insincerity. Don't be one who gives Allah his back and people his face after he was honored with knowledge in what Allah honored you with. When you give sincerity to other than Allah, that's just like you give your back to Allah. He gave you that knowledge, and you gave your back to Allah and your face to people who didn't give you that knowledge. This is a matter that we need to work on day and night. You will find with more ikhlas, the barakah becomes more and more. The barakah will be in your life, in your knowledge. Every aspect of your life will have barakah in it with sincerity in talab al-ilm. You will find the talib ilm who's sincere. Allah will give him barakah in his life and his wealth. You will find the talib ilm who may not have, for example, maybe $20, yet people perceive him to be wealthy. Allah blessed him. Allah gave him barakah in his knowledge and his wealth. With proper, and in his happiness in his life. With proper intention, Allah, ash-shakur, showers one with sweetness in his heart and blessings in his life, in this life, before the next. And that's the meaning of ash-shakur. Ash-shakur, the most appreciative. That's the meaning of it. With sincerity comes barakah in knowledge. When one is sincere, you will study and absorb more. You will feel that with sincerity. The same book you've been studying, or the Quran you've been reading for so long, when you work on your sincerity, Allah will open your mind to deeper meanings you never thought of before. What's the difference? It's the same book. Sincerity is Ikhlaas. That's why you get astonished at how the older ulama took lessons from verses. You say, how did they get that out of the verse? The point is clear, your intention in this path. Every word you say in da'wah. Why did I say this? Why did I type this status? Why did I send that tweet? Every time. Sometimes you're on social media and you're giving da'wah. You get slandered or you get dragged into an argument or a debate. If you fear, merely you fear that your reply is in retaliation for your own person and not for the cause that you were given in da'wah, then back away. Don't send it. Complete silence for Allah is better than responding and quarreling that ends up being half for Allah and half for personal gain. Don't worry about your person. Defend the cause, not your person. When knowledge is barricaded from sincerity or action, it becomes something one will regret, and its harm is more than its help. Knowledge was not meant to gain followers. Knowledge wasn't meant to impress sisters or to marry a second and third and fourth wife or to get popular. Talabat al-ilm are not rock stars and comedians. They are talabat ilm, as the Salaf used to say. When one used to seek knowledge, it became apparent on his actions. You would see it on him. You would see it in his attitude, in his appearance, once they turned to knowledge. You could see the change to the better. That's what they mean. Ilm is not something to play those games with. The first to go to hell is a alim. Wallahi al-azim, that's something to be taken seriously. That's not something to be taken lightly. Be careful. Do you know this hadith that I just mentioned to you, that we say and we take so casually, the alim is the first to enter hell? This hadith that made Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anh fall unconscious in fear 3 times before he was able to say it. The hadith about a alim entering hell. Abu Hurairah tried to tell that to someone. He fell unconscious 3 times before he was able to say it. Out of fear of his intention. In Sunan al-Tirmidhi, Shafi al-Asbahi said, he's a tabi', I went to the masjid and I seen people gathering around a man. I said, who's this man? He said, Abu Hurairah. He said, that's Abu Hurairah? He said, I stood there until people left. When I was with him alone, I said, teach me a hadith you fully comprehended from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, Nashagha Abu Huraira. What does Nashagha mean? Nashagha means he took a deep sigh and he fainted unconscious. He was about to say the hadith, took a deep sigh and fell unconscious. When he was about to say, he said, I'll tell you the hadith. He fell unconscious. Then he awoke, he wiped his face. He said, okay, I'll tell you the hadith. Then as he was about to say this hadith, Nashagha Abu Huraira. He fell unconscious again. He took a deep sigh, fell unconscious. Then he wipes his face a third time. And then he falls unconscious a third time. Then he awoke and he was able to finally mention this hadith. Where a person who is of the Quran or mujahid or gives in charity are the first to enter hell because of their lack in sincerity. Abu Huraira radiyallahu anhu feared that hadith. I ask you by Allah, what are we going to say today? That's something to analyze and look at. That's why I told you we'll devote a halaqah today. Sincerity is not easy. And it needs a lot of work on it. If Abu Huraira radiallahu anhu passed out 3 times fear and sincerity, or a hadith that has sincerity in it, from this hadith, Ahmad Jibril, what should you say? Ahmad Jibril should be in a coma right now. Wallahi, that's true. من تعلم علما مما يبتغى به وجه الله عز وجل لا يتعلم إلا ليصيب به عرضا من الدنيا لم يجد عرف الجنة. رواه Abu Dawood. Whoever studies knowledge, doesn't do so except for worldly matters, will not get the عرف الجنة. عرف الجنة is, I know I mentioned this hadith before, is the smell of heaven. We have to check our Ikhlaas day and night, every detail of our path, every little tiny deed that we do, fix the intention. When one commits a sin, they get a black dot on their hearts, وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ, unless they wash it off with repentance. كَلَّا بَرَّانَ عَلَىٰ قُلُوبِهِمْ مَا كَانُوا يَكْسِبُونَ. One who doesn't wash it off, well, of course, will have a darkened heart, and then it becomes, when it's dark like that, it becomes upside down. Like a cup that's upside down, you try to put water in it, it rejects water. You can't put a, that's why you talk to some people, they're in one avenue and you're in one avenue. Deficiency in Ikhlaas is very similar in that it starts small, like those dots. It starts in little matters, the deficiency. It starts like tiny hair strings that make a rope. A little deficiency in Ikhlaas is like a hair string. If you don't get rid of that string, by fixing your intention and clearing your intention, washing your intention and making it pure, you get another string, like those dots, the hair string, and another hair string. Before you know it, the heart is swaddled in a tight rope of complete insincerity. Once that rope swaddles, that's the point of no return, or almost of no return. That's when seeking knowledge becomes for fame. Teaching is for money and prestige and to impress the community. A da'iyah becomes known more for his personal life and wealth and hotels that he goes in and out more than his da'wah itself. So clean the heart from those hair strings before the rope swaddles your heart in insincerity. The heart in pertaining to Ikhlaas has one face. Has a face and has a back. Has one face. You can either face Allah with your heart of Ikhlaas or face people in worldly matters. It's one or the other. You can't do both. It has one face. If you face people in Ikhlaas, you give Allah your back. If you face Allah in Ikhlaas, you give people your back in Ikhlaas, and that's where you want to be. That's where you want your heart to be. When one is in a noble task of learning and teaching, he is on a thin line. He's walking on a thin line. There's no room for play. When you're walking on a thin line, suspended in air, do you sit around and play up there? Like they do in the circus? Do they sit and play on the rope? You gotta be walking on a thin line. One sees his followers. One sees people listening to him and he starts to win arguments and debates or begins to correct people, or even at times when someone's in the noble duties of the most noble duties, he sees some karamat of victory. You can't at that point let your Ikhlaas relax. And that's what happens a lot of the times. The tainting in Ikhlaas begins to seep in if one doesn't constantly wash it out. Look at the flip side of it all. We said the higher rank in Jannah goes to certain people. Those who hold themselves to a higher standard. If the first three to enter hell is a alim, a reciter, and a mujahid, then the opposite is true. We always said Allah holds you to a higher standard. Who the first to enter Jannah is the messengers after the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because they are the heads of the ulama. They are the heads of the ones who ordain the good and forbid the evil. That's why the ulama are called the inheritors of the messengers, warathat al-anbiya. The closer one is to them, the closer he will enter in his actions and deeds, the closer he will enter Jannah after and right behind them and near them. If you want that high rank and that honorable entry with the messengers, you need to know that you're going to be held at a higher standard. A standard so high that if you mess up, you'll be the first to enter Jahannam, wal-'iyadu billah. See how dangerous that is? Sometimes ilm, learning and teaching becomes a desire in itself for itself. It becomes like food, water, or even like sexual relationship. I can give you many examples. We don't have time. But I can give you examples where it becomes an addiction for itself. Some people learn just to learn. It's an addiction and joy. That's not why we learn. We learn for the sake of Allah, and that's another matter we need to purify our hearts from. Knowledge is joy. It is joyful to learn. But we learn for the sake of Allah, to fix ourselves and others. Our messenger taught for 13 years. Tawheed. Tawheed for 13 years. Nuh taught them 950 years worth of Tawheed. La ilaha illallah. They knew Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose them for the task, so they remained firm with Ikhlaas on that task. It would not be an exaggeration to say the majority of the problems of this ummah come from insincerity of especially talabat al-ilm and ulama. If me and you learn for the sake of Allah, we go about and teach for the sake of Allah, the teaching of the pure, unadulterated teaching, and it's all for the sake of Allah. Can you tell me where the tyrants are going to find so-called shaykh to give them the free open fatwa? Today, some ulama give a blank paper to the tyrant rulers with the bottom of it signed and stamped. Go ahead, just write on the top whatever you want. The tyrants need ulama to back them, to stay in power. Now, if there was, Sisi needs it. Other tyrants need it. Now, if there was, that's why they always turn to them. There was Ikhlaas. Where would the rulers find these people? You need to ask, why am I studying? Why am I teaching? So the people can point the finger at me? So I can get a good salary? Is it because the imam and a da'i at times today makes better than a lawyer and a doctor? We spoke briefly on this before. But we devote this class, inshallah, to Ikhlaas, so we can work on our Ikhlaas. It's worthy of devoting not one class, many more classes. Sufyan al-Thawri said, مَا عَالَجْتُ شَيْئًا أَشَدَّ عَلَيَّ مِن نِيَّتِي. There's nothing I struggled with more than my intention. That's Sufyan al-Thawri speaking. Ibn Wahab said, I seen Sufyan al-Thawri make sujood. This is the man who said that. Sufyan al-Thawri, he said, Ibn Wahab said, I seen Sufyan al-Thawri make sujood in the Masjid al-Haram after Maghrib, and he never raised his forehead from that first sajda until he heard the call for Isha. One sajda was from Maghrib to Isha. And he says, the worst thing I struggled with was my intention. And Abu Hurairah falls unconscious from it. Ali ibn Fudayl said, I walked around the Kaaba 7 times while Sufyan al-Thawri was still in one sajda. Ibn al-Mubarak said, I wrote from 1,100 scholars, there was not one more knowledgeable than Sufyan al-Thawri. Sufyan said, I don't know anything better than seeking knowledge with sincerity. All that. And he says about himself, he struggles with niyyah so much that it's the struggle that he has to struggle and deal with. The biggest matter he had to deal with. If Sufyan said that, may Allah have mercy on us. Abu Yusuf told the students, be sincere in your deeds. I never sat a setting I intended to be humble except Allah elevated and raised me. I never sat a setting I intended to be humble except Allah elevated and raised me. And I never sat in a setting where I wanted to be supreme over others except that Allah lowered and humiliated me. Ikhlaas. Ikhlaas is the water to the heart. Ikhlaas is the water to the heart that keeps your heart alive. Deficiencies in Ikhlaas dry up that water and kill the heart. Finally, never say, okay, I'm giving up. I guess this is too much. I'd rather not study. We already hinted about that in previous classes. But no, you want the high rank. The first row to enter in the 8 gates. So your standards gotta be different. Habib ibn Abi Thabit said, طلبنا هذا العلم وما لنا فيه نية ثم جاءت النية والعمل بعد. We studied the knowledge and our intention was deficient, had deficiency in it. Or we had no intention. Then Allah granted us with persistence, intention, and on top of that action. So you be persistent and you keep working on that. That's what you got to do. You work on the intention, you work on acting on the knowledge, and you will achieve intention and ikhlas. If you didn't get out of this ilm in general and more specific, the ilm of tawheed, but to keep tawheed fresh on your mind and your heart so you can say la ilaha illallah at your deathbed, then that's a sufficient goal.
Keep in mind, sincerity is important when attaining knowledge. That's one of the most important things. Because when one has knowledge, he begins to become arrogant sometimes. And also, some people, it's a money maker these days. More than a lawyer and a doctor. You know, you're being a shaykh is above a lawyer and a doctor today. And so, you gotta purify your intention. Our intention is for the sake of Allah. And you gotta clean your heart every time you do anything. When you come up here, when you're studying at home. Why am I doing this? I'm doing this for the sake of Allah. It's wanna make it, or learning knowledge. It's better than praying your nafilah salah. If you don't purify your knowledge, your heart, from lack of sincerity, what happens with the heart is that lack of sincerity is like strings. Sins to the heart are black dots. They cover the heart, and it becomes a black heart unless one repents. Lack of sincerity is like strings. It surrounds the heart. Little string, a little string, a little string. If you don't purify the heart, what happens with little strings? What happens with little strings when they're together? It's a rope that covers the heart. And that's when the heart no longer is working for the sake of Allah. When Imam Abu Hanifa, they asked him, how did you attain your knowledge? He said, I attained it by saying Alhamdulillah. They said, how? He said, Allah said, وَلَئِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ. If you thank me, I'm going to give you more. Every time I learn something, I say Alhamdulillah. And there, let me tell you one more thing. Can I have a few more minutes, please? A few more minutes? Okay. You know the author of this book that you mentioned several times, Ar-Rahiq al-Makhtoum? Ar-Rahiq al-Makhtoum, the seal nectar. Mubarak Furi. Safiyuddin Mubarak, that was my teacher in Medina. Let me tell you something. This is a summarized version of the seerah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Summarized. This is a summarized version. We have bigger ones like Al-Bidayah wa Nihayah. We got other ones, and we got summarized. This is summarized version. The Shaykh was my teacher in Medina. I used to go to his house almost every day. Let me ask you a question. I can name you today, right now, maybe over 8 books from contemporary ulama that are in the same size as Mubarak Furi's book. But you know that it's the most widespread book on the face of the earth in the seerah today? Do you know that? Why? Can someone tell me why? Can someone tell me why? Wallahi, our Shaykh said, Jazakallah khair, Shaykh. Our Shaykh said sincerity, and that's the truth. You know where he lived? He was working in the University of Medina, and they paid big money over there for the professors back in the days. You know where he lived? He lived with 4 construction workers in an apartment with 4 bedrooms. I wouldn't live in that apartment. Wallahi, I wouldn't live in that apartment. He lived in there. His mattress was about this thin. You know what he did with his money? He gave it for the sake of Allah. He told me 1/3 of my money goes to my family. I don't think many people in the world know this fact about the Shaykh. 2/3 of his money used to go for the sake of Allah. And back then there was the Soviet problems over there, and he used to help them. The Soviet problems in the 80s. Rahmatullah alayhi, he died some years ago. Let me also tell you that King Faisal gave him a big reward for that book. And you know he gave every penny of that for the sake of Allah. That's why Mubarak Fori's book is among the top, #1 today in the world. It's been translated into many numerous languages. Why? What about those other ones? I have another Shaykh who taught me in the Haram. He wrote a near identical book like that. It's more eloquent. I don't want to name his name so I won't degrade anyone. But why is it not as spread as that Mubarak Fori? Because of sincerity.
سبيل الدموع سبيل مريح تنهد يا صاحي كي تستريح وبث الدعاء الخفي الصريح يسعك الفضاء الرحيم الفسيح سبيل الدموع سبيل مريح تنهد يا صاحي كي تستريح وبث الدعاء الخفي الصريح